Arriving home earlier than usual, a businessman catches his disabled son helping the housekeeper with a smile on his face. He discovers that behind the scenes of daily life, this woman was helping his son learn to walk and to dream. That encounter changes his life, reconnects his family, and inspires a project that transforms other children. The sun was setting over the skyscrapers of New York City when Ronald Sterling, CEO of one of the country's largest construction companies, got into his executive car. He was exhausted but satisfied. The meeting with the shareholders had ended, 2 hours ahead of schedule, a rarity in his always overloaded agenda. "Where to, Mr. Sterling?" asked Joshua, his driver for over a decade. "Home, Joshua." Ronald hesitated for a moment, looking at his watch. "Actually, let's go straight to Greenwich. No need to announce my arrival." The driver nodded, accustomed to the discretion his boss demanded. As the car glided through the congested streets of the New York metropolis, Ronald mentally reviewed the numbers presented at the meeting. His business empire grew every quarter, even in times of unstable economy. Sterling Construction was his pride, his obsession, his life's work. In the back seat of the imported car, he opened his laptop to answer some urgent emails. Between one message and another, he found a photo his wife, Camilla, had sent earlier, their 8-year-old son, Lucas, in a session with the school's physical therapist. The boy smiled shyly, leaning on his colorful child-sized crutches, while the professional adjusted a brace on his legs. Lucas had been born with a condition that affected his lower limbs. Doctors assured them that with proper treatment, he could develop independent locomotion, but the process was slow, painful, and required constant dedication. Dedication that Ronald, honestly, had never managed to offer. "How's young Lucas doing, Mr. Sterling?" Joshua asked, breaking the silence. Ronald looked at the driver through the rearview mirror, annoyed by the personal question, but answered dryly, "He's fine. Making progress." In truth, Ronald didn't know exactly what progress his son was making. The specialist appointments, the therapies, the daily exercises, all of that was Camilla's territory, his wife. He financed the best treatments money could buy, but rarely participated in any practical aspect of his son's care. The car stopped in front of the gate of the mansion in Greenwich, an award-winning architectural project Ronald had commissioned 5 years earlier. The security guard, surprised to see him arrive so early, hastened to open the gate. "No need to announce my arrival," Ronald instructed as he got out of the car. "I want to surprise the family." Walking through the impeccably maintained garden, Ronald felt a strange anxiety. It wasn't common to return home at 6 in the evening on a Wednesday. It wasn't common, in fact, to be home at any time other than late at night, when everyone was already asleep, or during brief Sunday moments before traveling again. He entered silently through the side door, the one that led directly to the intimate area of the house. There was no one in the living room. From the hallway, he heard children's laughter coming from the game room. The sound caught him by surprise. He couldn't remember the last time he had heard his son laugh like that, with such spontaneity. He approached noiselessly. The door was ajar, allowing him to see what was happening inside without being noticed. Lucas was in the center of the room, on a colorful rug, using only one of his crutches for balance. Beside him, kneeling on the floor, was Janine, the employee who had been working in the house for about 6 months. Ronald knew her only by sight, a woman of approximately 30 with brown skin, curly hair tied back in a simple bun, always in a discreet uniform. "That's it, Lucas, keep your balance. You can do it," Janine encouraged, with a soft southern accent. "Now try to take a little step without the crutch, just a bit. I'm here if you need me." To Ronald's surprise, the boy let go of the crutch, which fell to the floor with a soft thud. Lucas stood alone for a few seconds, his little arms outstretched to the sides like a tightrope walker. His face showed intense concentration, his tongue held between his teeth in effort. "I did it, Janine. Look, I'm standing." "I see, my champion. You're amazing." The boy took a shaky step and immediately lost his balance. Janine quickly supported him, preventing him from falling. Instead of frustration, what Ronald saw was his son laughing, genuinely happy with the small achievement. "Next time I'll manage 2 steps, you'll see," Lucas exclaimed, enthusiastic. "I'm sure you will. You get better every day," Janine replied, stroking the boy's hair with evident affection. "Now let's do that strengthening exercise Dr. Marianne taught, okay?" Ronald remained motionless, observing the scene. Something awoke in him, a mix of curiosity, astonishment, and, though he wouldn't admit it, a pang of jealousy. That employee, hired to clean the house, was doing therapeutic exercises with his son, and apparently getting results that the expensive specialists he had hired hadn't achieved. Even more surprising was seeing Lucas so at ease, so confident. In the rare moments Ronald interacted with his son, the boy was shy, almost fearful, as if he dreaded disappointing his demanding father. Here with Janine, he was a different child, spontaneous, laughing, determined. "You know what, Janine?" Lucas said, as he positioned himself for the next exercise. "When I can walk by myself, the first thing I'll do is play soccer with Dad. He keeps saying he doesn't have time, but then he won't have an excuse, right?" The sentence hit Ronald like a physical blow. He felt the weight of every word, of every unfulfilled promise, of every "we'll see about that later" he had told his son over the years. "Your dad works a lot, Lucas," Janine replied gently. "I'm sure he'll be proud when he sees your progress." "Do you really think he'll stop to see me one day, Janine? He doesn't even know what I do during the day." Ronald stepped back a few paces, preferring not to hear the answer. He composed himself and then made a purposeful noise as if he were just arriving. "Good evening, anyone home?" he called, feigning normalcy. "Dad?" Lucas's voice came from the game room, mixing surprise and enthusiasm. When Ronald entered the room, he found Janine already standing, helping Lucas sit in his wheelchair. The employee seemed embarrassed, as if she had been caught doing something wrong. "Good evening, Mr. Sterling," she said formally. "I'm sorry, I was just—" "Dad, Janine was helping me with my exercises. I managed to stand by myself for a few seconds," Lucas interrupted, animated. Ronald looked at his son, then at the employee and then back at Lucas. He saw something he had never noticed before, the sparkle in the boy's eyes when he spoke of his small achievements, a sparkle that he, Ronald, had never properly valued. "That's impressive, son," he replied, genuinely surprised. "Can we talk about this during dinner?" Lucas nodded, euphoric with his father's unusual attention. Janine began to withdraw discreetly. "Janine," Ronald called, stopping her at the door. "I'd like to talk to you later, in my office if that's all right." The woman's face paled slightly. "Yes, sir, as soon as I finish serving dinner." As the employee left, Ronald noticed the worried look Lucas cast in her direction. Something was happening in his own home, something important involving his son, and he was completely unaware. At that moment, he promised himself that this would change, starting that very night. If this story has interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. Dinner that night was different from all others in the Sterling mansion. For the first time in months, Ronald was present before 9 o'clock, sitting at the head of the long dining table, observing his family as if seeing them for the first time. Camilla, his wife, barely disguised her surprise at his presence. Elegant even in casual attire, she maintained the impeccable posture that years of interacting with New York high society had molded. Her eyes, however, showed a mix of happiness and distrust, as if trying to understand the reason for her husband's sudden change in routine. "Did something happen, Ronald?" she finally asked as Janine served the appetizer. "You never come home so early." "The meeting ended ahead of schedule," he replied, discreetly observing the interaction between the employee and his son. Lucas smiled at Janine as she adjusted his napkin, a knowing smile that spoke of an intimacy Ronald was unaware of. "And I thought I'd take the opportunity to have dinner with the family." Camilla raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. Lucas, in turn, seemed energized by his father's presence. "Dad, today I stood up by myself, without any support," the boy exclaimed, almost knocking over his juice glass in excitement. "Is that right?" Ronald tried to show enthusiasm, aware that his tone came out more formal than he would have liked. "For how long?" "About 10 seconds, Janine counted. Didn't you, Janine?" The employee, who had just re-entered the room with a serving dish, blushed slightly. "It was 7 seconds, Lucas, but tomorrow we'll try to reach 10, she replied with a warm smile. "And you've been helping my son with these exercises regularly?" Ronald asked, maintaining a neutral tone. Janine seemed uncomfortable. She cast a quick glance at Camilla before answering. "Only during my break time, sir. It doesn't interfere with my duties in the house." "Janine has a brother who also had leg problems," Lucas interjected, animated. "She learned a lot of exercises helping him." Ronald noticed the use of the past tense and the slight tremor in Janine's smile. There was a story there, he realized, but it wasn't the time to. "Question. Janine has been a blessing to us," Camilla said finally. Since she arrived, Lucas has made surprising progress. Dinner proceeded with Lucas dominating the conversation, telling his father about his advancements in sessions with Janine. His school activities, the books he was reading, an entire world Ronald barely knew. At the end of the meal, when Janine served dessert, Ronald noticed how she naturally adapted each movement to facilitate Lucas's access, without making a fuss about his condition, treating him with a dignity that many adults couldn't offer to children with disabilities. "Lucas, it's getting late for you," Camilla said, checking her watch. "Janine, can you help him with his bath while I talk to my husband?" "Of course, ma'am," the employee replied. "Shall we go, Lucas? Tonight is story night before bed." "Yay. Can we continue the one about the boy who found a magic portal?" The two left the dining room, the boy in his wheelchair being pushed by Janine, both immersed in an animated discussion about the book they were reading together. When they were alone, Camilla turned to Ronald, her expression serious. What happened? Why this sudden interest in Lucas's exercises? Ronald sighed, pouring himself a whiskey from the bar cart near the table. "I arrived early and saw our son with Janine. They didn't see me." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "Camilla, I've never seen Lucas so happy, so confident. What exactly is happening? Why am I not aware of these exercise sessions?" Camilla gave a bitter laugh, holding her wine glass by its long, elegant stem. "Do you really want to know, Ronald? After how long? 3 years without attending a single doctor's appointment for your son. How many school presentations have you missed? Lucas stopped asking for you at physical therapy after the first year." The words hit Ronald with the force of a slap. He knew he wasn't a present father, but hearing it explicitly from his wife's mouth was different. "I work to give you the best," he defended himself, though his voice had lost its usual conviction. "The best?" Camilla shook her head. "Lucas doesn't need more imported toys or state-of-the-art wheelchairs. He needs his father. And I need a partner, not an absent provider. And why didn't you tell me about Janine, about what she does with Lucas?" Camilla sighed, softening her expression slightly. "I started to notice about 4 months ago. Lucas was different, more excited about the exercises. Even the school's physical therapist noticed the improvement. One day I arrived home early from an appointment and found them in the living room doing exercises. I watched just like you today." She paused, taking a sip of wine before continuing. "Janine explained everything to me. Her brother, Julian, was born with cerebral palsy back in Savannah, Georgia. The family didn't have money for expensive treatments, so their mother learned techniques from the few therapists they could consult at the public health clinic. Janine grew up helping to care for her brother, learning these exercises. And her brother? What happened to him? Julian managed to develop well, finish his studies. Today he works as an accountant in Atlanta. Janine came to New York City 10 years ago, seeking a better life. She has a technical nursing degree, you know, but she never managed to get a job in that field here. When the agency sent her to work in our house, she didn't mention that experience. She said she was afraid of being rejected for being overqualified for domestic service." Ronald absorbed the information, feeling increasingly aware of how much he didn't know about the people who were part of his daily life, including his own family. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Camilla looked at him with a mix of sadness and resignation. "Because you're never here, Ronald. Because when you are, you spend half your time on the phone or in your office. And because," she hesitated, "I was afraid you'd fire her." "Fire her? Why?" "Because you always insisted on certified professionals to care for Lucas. Because you always controlled every aspect of his treatment without truly participating. Because you—" Camilla swallowed hard, as if measuring her next words. "You have difficulty accepting that someone like Janine, without a university degree or specialization, could do more for your son than the expensive specialists you hire." The words hung in the air between them, heavy as lead. Ronald wanted to refute, to say it wasn't true, but deep down he knew Camilla was right. His pride, his need for control, his elitism disguised as concern, all of it was evident now. "Lucas adores her," Camilla continued more softly. "She's probably his best friend. On weekends, when she's not working here, he asks for her constantly." Ronald nodded, processing it all. The silence between them was interrupted by the soft sound of footsteps. It was Janine returning to the dining room. "Excuse me," she said, seeming embarrassed to interrupt the conversation. "Lucas is ready for bed, but he asked you to come say good night, Mr. Sterling, if it's not too much trouble." Ronald looked at the employee with new eyes. She wasn't just a housekeeper. She was someone who knew his son better than he did himself. "It's no trouble at all," he replied, standing up. "And afterwards, I'd like to talk to you in the office, Janine. I have some questions about these exercises you do with Lucas." Janine nodded, visibly nervous. "Yes, sir. So I'll be waiting." As he ascended the stairs towards his son's room, Ronald felt something unusual, a mix of shame and gratitude. Shame for having been so absent, so disconnected, and gratitude that perhaps it wasn't too late to change that. Deep down, a question echoed. How could he have been so blind to what truly mattered? Lucas's room was a small universe Ronald barely knew. Upon entering, he was surprised by the transformation of the space, far from the generic child's decor he remembered approving years ago. The walls now displayed maps of the United States and the world, constellations painted on the ceiling that glowed in the dark, and shelves filled with books organized by subject. It wasn't the room of just any 8-year-old boy. It was the sanctuary of a curious and active mind. Lucas was sitting on the bed surrounded by books. Upon seeing his father, his eyes lit up. "Dad, you really came." There was so much genuine surprise in that exclamation that Ronald felt a pang of guilt. Was it so extraordinary for him to come say goodnight to his own son? "Of course I came," he replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. He noticed an open book on the boy's lap. "What are you reading?" "A book about astronomy that Janine gave me. Did you know there are stars so big that if you put the sun inside them it would be like putting a pea inside a watermelon?" Ronald smiled. Lucas spoke with the characteristic enthusiasm of children, but there was something more there. An articulation, a clarity of reasoning impressive for his age. "I didn't know that. Do you really like astronomy?" "Yes, and geography too. Janine says that when I can walk by myself, we'll travel all over the country. She's already lived in 3 different states and knows a lot of cool places." Every mention of Janine was made with admiration. Ronald began to understand the dimension of the bond that had formed between his son and the employee. "Lucas, tell me more about these exercises you do with Janine." The boy adjusted himself on the bed, animated by his father's interest. "We started about 5 months ago. One day I dropped my book and she was cleaning the hallway. When she came to help me, she saw I was trying to do the exercises Dr. Marianne gave me. Then she taught me a different way that didn't hurt as much. The next day she came with some rubber balls and colorful elastic bands." Lucas continued explaining, with surprising technical precision for his age, how Janine adapted conventional physical therapy exercises to seem like games. How she created a journal where they recorded every small progress. How she transformed what could be tedious and painful into something fun and stimulating. The coolest thing is that she never says I can't do something. She says I just haven't learned how to do it yet. That phrase echoed in Ronald's mind. How many times had he himself limited people, including his son, with negative expectations? "And you like her very much, don't you?" "Gersi tang de vifante stay." "She's my best friend," Lucas exclaimed without hesitation. Then his expression became serious, almost worried. "Dad, you're not going to send her away, are you? Because I heard that sometimes, when housekeepers do things they shouldn't, they get sent away." Ronald felt a knot in his throat. His son's concern was so sincere it hurt. "No, Lucas, I'm not going to send Janine away. In fact," he paused, an idea beginning to form in his mind. "In fact, I think I'm going to talk to her about how we can improve your exercises even more. What do you think about that?" The boy's face lit up with a smile Ronald rarely had the chance to see. "That would be amazing. She said if I had some special equipment, I could progress faster. Then we'll get that equipment." Ronald stayed longer than he had planned, talking with his son. Lucas spoke about his dreams, playing soccer, exploring the cave he discovered in a book about Mammoth Cave National Park, visiting Everglades National Park to see the wild animals. Simple possible dreams that Ronald could easily help fulfill, but had never stopped to listen to. When he finally left the room with a promise to return the next night, Ronald headed to his office where he knew Janine was waiting. He found her, sitting in the anteroom, her hands clasped in her lap, visibly nervous. "Come in, Janine," he said, opening the door. Ronald's office was imposing, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a solid wood desk, and large windows that offered a view of the illuminated garden. It was his refuge, the place where he made major business decisions. "Please sit," he indicated, choosing not to position himself behind the desk, but in one of the leather armchairs. To make the conversation less formal, Janine obeyed, maintaining an upright posture and a downcast gaze. Her hands, Ronald noticed, had calluses typical of someone who works hard, but they were extremely careful and precise in their gestures. "My wife told me about your brother Julian," Ronald began, surprising her. "And about your experience with rehabilitation." Janine looked up, seeming at once relieved and apprehensive. "I apologize if I overstepped my duties, Mr. Sterling. I didn't intend to replace the professionals who work with Lucas. I'm not here to reprimand you." "Janine," he interrupted with a gentle gesture. "On the contrary, I want to better understand what you've been doing with my son. The results are impressive." The woman's face relaxed a little. For the first time since she had entered the office, Ronald saw a trace of that confident and warm person who interacted with his son. "My brother Julian was born with cerebral palsy in Savannah, a town in rural Georgia," she began, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "There were no resources there, sir. The physical therapist from the public health clinic came every 2 months, when the town car could get gas to pick her up. My mother, Mrs. Sabrina, illiterate but wise, learned everything she could from that physical therapist. At home, we adapted exercises with what we had. Plastic bottles became weights, broom handles became support bars, seeds inside cans became coordination instruments." She recounted how she grew up helping to care for her brother, how even without formal training in physical therapy, she developed a clinical eye for movements, for small evolutions, for necessary adaptations, how she managed to get a scholarship for a technical nursing course, but never had the opportunity to complete college. "When I first saw Lucas, I recognized that look. The same one my brother had when he was little. It's not physical pain, sir. It's frustration. It's wanting to do things that seem simple to others, but are mountains for him." Ronald listened attentively, perceiving the passion with which Janine spoke. It wasn't just technique. It was deep empathy. It was knowledge born of experience. What Lucas needs, more than expensive equipment, is consistency. It's someone who believes in him every day, who celebrates every millimeter gained. And he needs joy in the process. The pain and effort are inevitable, but suffering is optional. The phrase hung in the air, simple yet profound. Ronald thought about how many times, in his professional life, he had confused effort with suffering, how much he had lost by not finding joy in the process. "Janine," he finally said, "I have a proposal for you." She looked at him cautiously. "I would like you to officially become Lucas's therapeutic companion, no longer as a domestic employee but in a new role. With an adequate salary, specific hours dedicated to his treatment, and," he paused to emphasize the next point, "I would like to finance your physical therapy education, the full degree." Janine's eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Sterling, I don't know what to say. Say you accept. We will hire someone else for the household chores. You will be able to dedicate yourself to your studies and Lucas's treatment." Janine seemed too emotional to respond immediately. She took several deep breaths as if trying to process the proposal. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why would you do this for me?" The question caught Ronald by surprise. He was accustomed to people accepting his offers without questioning motivations. "Because you've done more for my son in a few months than I've done in years," he replied, with an honesty that surprised even himself. "And because talents like yours shouldn't be wasted cleaning the floor of my house." The next morning, Ronald did something unprecedented. He cancelled all his meetings. When he came down for breakfast, he surprised Camilla and Lucas, who were already at the table. "Dad, aren't you going to work?" Lucas asked wide-eyed. "Not today, champion. Today I want to watch your session with Janine." The smile he received in response was worth every cancelled appointment. Camilla looked at him with a mix of surprise and cautious hope. Janine arrived shortly after, looking nervous to see Ronald present. But soon her attention turned to Lucas, and the exercises began. Ronald watched, fascinated, how she transformed each therapeutic movement into a fun challenge, how she engaged the boy with stories and encouragement. At one point, Lucas stood, supported only by Janine's hands. Gradually, she released her fingers one by one until for 30 full seconds, the boy remained standing, alone. When Lucas looked at his father, his eyes overflowed with pride. Ronald couldn't contain his emotion. He hugged his son right there, careful not to unbalance him. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered in the boy's ear. Looking over Lucas's shoulder, his eyes met Janine's. No words were needed. The look of gratitude they exchanged said everything. At that moment, Ronald understood that he had embarked on a journey of no return. It wasn't just about Lucas learning to walk. It was about him, Ronald, learning to be a father. It was about rediscovering his family, his values, his purpose, and all this thanks to a woman who had entered his house to clean the floor, but ended up cleaning much more. The invisible barriers he himself had built between himself and what truly mattered. In the weeks that followed, the Sterling mansion witnessed subtle yet profound changes. Ronald's home office, once untouchable territory, now frequently had its door open. His agenda, reorganized with the help of an understanding assistant, made regular space for him to accompany Lucas's sessions with Janine, which now took place in a specially adapted room on the ground floor. Camilla observed her husband's transformation with a mixture of relief and caution. Years of absence were not erased in a few days, but a genuine change was underway. On the rare occasions they were truly alone, she hugged him tighter, as if fearing that this renewed version of Ronald might disappear at any moment. Janine, now officially hired as Lucas's therapeutic companion, had begun the enrollment process for physical therapy college. A new employee, Mrs. Irene, had taken over the household chores, allowing Janine to dedicate herself exclusively to Lucas's care and her preparatory studies for the entrance exam. The new routine brought a lightness long forgotten to that house. Lucas's progress was celebrated collectively. Meals became moments of genuine conversation, and even weekends, previously filled with Ronald's work commitments, now included family outings. It was on a sunny Saturday, as Ronald practiced balance exercises with Lucas in the garden, following Janine's instructions, that the first obstacle appeared on the path of this new harmony. "Ronald, darling, what a surprise to find you home." The sharp, affected voice of Veronica Brandon, wife of one of Sterling Construction's main shareholders, cut through the air like a whip. Beside her, her husband, Albert Brandon, smiled cordially, but visibly uncomfortable. Camilla, who was reading on a nearby lounge chair, quickly stood up to greet them. "Veronica, Albert, what an unexpected visit," she said, with the trained politeness of years in high society. "We were in the area and thought we'd stop by to confirm if you're coming to the Institute's charity dinner next Saturday," Veronica explained, her eyes critically assessing the garden, the house, and finally resting on Lucas, who remained focused on his exercises. Ronald approached, naturally carrying his son in his arms. "Brandon, good to see you. We could have settled this by phone. You didn't need to go to the trouble of coming all the way here." "It was Veronica's idea," Albert replied with a resigned shrug. "She wanted to see in person the renovation Camilla mentioned at the last wives' luncheon." "We haven't started the renovation yet," Camilla clarified, leading the visitors to the terrace. "But come in, let's have something refreshing." As they settled in, Janine appeared from inside the house. She was no longer wearing a uniform, but rather casual and discreet clothes. Appropriate for working with Lucas, she carried a tray with water and glasses. "Excuse me," she said politely, placing the tray on the coffee table. "Mr. Sterling, I brought the therapeutic elastic bands you requested for the next set of exercises." "Thank you, Janine," Ronald replied, taking the materials. "This is our therapeutic companion," he explained to the Brandons. "She's doing an exceptional job with Lucas." Veronica observed Janine from head to toe, with that peculiar look of someone evaluating a clearance item. Therapeutic companion. I thought your son attended the Cardim Institute. They have the best physical therapists in New York City. And he still does, Camilla replied. Janine compliments the treatment here at home. She has special experience with cases like Lucas's. I see, Veronica said, though her tone indicated just the opposite. And where did you get your degree, dear? She asked Janine directly. A brief, awkward silence hung over the terrace. Janine, however, maintained her dignity. I'm still studying in college, ma'am, but I have a technical nursing degree and many years of practical experience. Veronica gave a condescending smile. How interesting. The Sterlings have always been known for hiring only the best professionals. A change in philosophy, Ronald. The comment, laden with thinly veiled prejudice, made Ronald's blood boil. Before he could respond, however, it was Lucas who broke the silence. Janine is the best teacher in the world, the boy exclaimed, indignant. Before her I couldn't stand by myself for even 5 seconds. Now I can walk 4 steps without help. Lucas, Camilla gently warned, though her eyes shone with pride at her son's passionate defense. But it's true, Mum, he insisted. Dr. Cecilia at the Institute said I would only be able to do this after another year of treatment. Janine taught me in 3 months. Veronica seemed disconcerted by the boy's eloquence. How adorable, she commented with evident falsity. But dear, you shouldn't call the staff by their first name. It's not appropriate. That's when Ronald lost his patience. Janine is not staff, Veronica. She is a respected professional in this house and deserves to be treated as such. Of course, Veronica retreated, realizing she had crossed a line. I'm just surprised by so much informality. Janine, sensing the tense atmosphere, discreetly addressed Lucas. Shall we continue our exercises in the special room, Lucas? Let's leave your parents to talk with the visitors. The boy nodded, not without first casting a defiant look at Veronica. When they left, Albert tried to lighten the situation by talking about business, but the damage was done. The visit ended earlier than expected, with vague promises to meet at the charity dinner. As soon as the Brandons left, Ronald found Camilla in the kitchen, preparing tea with trembling hands. I'm sorry about that, he said, hugging her from behind. Veronica has always been unbearable. I'm used to her prejudice, Camilla replied. But I'm worried about Janine. She doesn't deserve that kind of treatment. I'll talk to her. Ronald found Janine and Lucas in the improvised physical therapy room, working concentrated on coordination exercises. He waited for them to finish before calling the companion for a conversation. I'm sorry for our visitor's behavior, he said when they were alone. I hope you know we don't share that view. Janine gave a sad smile. Don't worry, Mr. Sterling. It's not the first time I've faced this kind of situation, nor will it be the last. The important thing is that Lucas is progressing well. Even so, it's unacceptable, and I want you to know that here in this house you deserve and will have all respect. She nodded, seeming genuinely touched. Thank you. And I wanted to say, she hesitated briefly, I'm very happy with the changes I've seen in Lucas since you started participating more actively. It makes all the difference to him. That recognition, coming from someone who truly knew his son, meant more to Ronald than any corporate praise he had ever received. The incident with the Brandons would be just the first in a series of challenges that would test the Sterling family's new configuration. 2 weeks later, Ronald received an unexpected call in his office at the construction company. Mr. Sterling, this is Mark Vance from Vance Engineering. Ronald frowned. Vance was his main competitor in the New York City construction market, known for aggressive business practices and for trying to recruit key employees from other companies. Vance, how can I help you? I heard you have an exceptional employee working with your son. Janine Ferreira, isn't it? Ronald felt a chill run down his spine. How did Vance know about Janine? Amatu, what about her? I'm interested in hiring her. My grandson has a similar condition to your son's, and I need someone with experience. I'm willing to offer double what you pay, plus benefits and a functional apartment near my house. The offer was absurd, clearly calculated to be irresistible for someone in Janine's economic position. I'm sorry, Vance, but Janine is not available for hire. Everyone has their price. Sterling, the man replied coldly. I've already made the offer directly to her. I'm calling out of courtesy, so you're not caught by surprise when she resigns." Ronald felt his blood run cold. Knowing Janine's family's financial situation, he feared the offer might indeed be tempting for her. And while he wanted to believe that the bond created with Lucas would weigh more, he knew that economic reality often forced difficult choices. "Good luck with your approach, Vance, but don't count on it." He hung up the phone, disturbed. What would he do if Janine actually considered the offer? And what would that mean for Lucas, who was already so attached to her? That afternoon, he arrived home earlier than usual, finding Janine in the garden, supervising Lucas as he practiced walking between improvised parallel bars. "Janine, I'm doing it," the boy exclaimed, concentrated on maintaining his balance. "You're doing great, Lucas. 2 more steps and you'll beat your record from yesterday." Ronald observed the scene for a few moments before approaching. Janine's dedication was evident in every gesture, in every word of encouragement. It wasn't just a job for her, there was genuine affection involved. "Dad, look what I'm doing." Lucas noticed his presence, his face lit up with pride. "I see, champion." Impressive. When Lucas finished the exercise and was taken inside by Mrs. Irene for his snack, Ronald asked to speak with Janine. "I received an interesting call today," he began, carefully observing her reaction. "From Mark Vance." Janine lowered her gaze, confirming his suspicions that she had already been approached. "He contacted me yesterday. Mr. Sterling. He said he learned about my work with Lucas through a niece who works at the Cardim Institute." "And what did you say to his proposal?" Janine took a deep breath before answering. "I said I needed to think about it. It's her very generous offer." Ronald nodded, understanding the woman's dilemma. "My sister is sick in Atlanta," Janine continued, her voice wavering slightly. "Breast cancer. The treatment in the public health system is good, but there are queues, waits. With the salary he offered, I could pay for private treatment for her. Help my brother Julian, who takes care of her alone. Maybe even bring them both to New York City." The words came out laden with guilt and conflict. Ronald realized it wasn't just a financial matter. It was a family responsibility, a duty she felt towards her own. "On the other hand," Janine continued, now with tears in her eyes, "the idea of leaving Lucas breaks my heart. He's progressed so much. We're in the middle of such an important process. And the bond we've created." She discreetly wiped away her tears. "Sorry, I shouldn't mix feelings with work." Ronald remained silent for a few moments, processing what he had heard. Then he made a decision that weeks ago would have seemed unthinkable for the calculating businessman he was. "Janine, I'm going to match Vance's offer. And additionally, I will arrange for your sister to receive the best treatment here in New York City at Mount Sinai Hospital. We will also help your brother settle here if he wants to come. What do you say?" Her eyes widened in shock. "Mr. Sterling, I don't know what to say. Why? Why would you do all this?" For the second time, she surprised him with that direct question, devoid of the formalities and social games he was accustomed to. "Because you changed my son's life. And in a way, you changed mine too. Some things are more important than money or business competition. That's a lesson you inadvertently taught me." Janine couldn't contain her emotion. With tears flowing freely now, she nodded. "I accept to stay, and I promise to continue giving my best for Lucas." At that moment, not only a professional agreement was sealed, but a pact of trust and mutual respect that transcended the social and economic barriers that initially separated them. Spring in New York City brought mild warmth and colorful flowers to the Sterling Mansion's gardens. 6 months had passed since that fateful afternoon, when Ronald arrived early and witnessed the scene that would change his family's course. 6 months of profound transformations, not only physical but emotional and relational. Lucas, now newly 9 years old, had surpassed all medical expectations. The boy who could barely stand alone now walked around the house with minimal assistance, using only a light, colorful cane in situations of greater fatigue. His sessions at the Cardim Institute, once marked by tears and frustration, were now awaited with enthusiasm, as they became opportunities to show specialists the progress achieved at home. Janine had flourished in her new role. In her first semester of physical therapy, she already stood out among her colleagues for her practical experience. Her professors frequently sought her out after classes to discuss the adapted techniques she had developed with Lucas. Her sister, Marina, responding well to treatment at Mount Sinai, now lived with her and Julian in a comfortable apartment in Queens, purchased with Ronald's help as part of the new benefits package. But the most significant transformation, perhaps, was Ronald's. The relentless businessman, obsessed with results and expansion, was now regularly seen playing ball with his son in the garden, participating in school meetings, and even declining business trips that coincided with important milestones in Lucas's life. His partners and employees noticed the change, not a weakening as some initially feared, but a maturation, a humanization that made him, paradoxically, a more effective and respected leader. Camilla, observing everything silently, finally allowed herself to believe that the change was real and permanent. One particular night, after Lucas had fallen asleep, she confessed something to Ronald that deeply shook him. "I had decided to separate," she revealed, as they shared a glass of wine on the balcony. "Before you changed, I had even consulted a lawyer." Ronald felt the weight of that confession like a physical blow. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you weren't really present to listen," she replied without resentment in her voice, merely stating a fact. "We were together, but I felt alone. Lucas needed a father, not an absent provider. I needed a partner, not a husband I barely saw. And now?" he asked with genuine apprehension about the answer. Camilla smiled, placing her hand over his. "Now I'm glad I waited, for having witnessed this transformation, for seeing the man I loved re-emerge from that obsessed executive." The Sterling's marriage, which seemed destined to be another divorce statistic among high society families, now found a new solidity, based not on appearances or social conveniences, but on genuine connection and shared purpose. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, the family was preparing for an important event, Lucas's school's autumn presentation. The boy, who had always avoided participating in public activities due to his condition, would now be part of the choir, strategically positioned where he could sing seated, if necessary, but determined to stand like his classmates. "I'm nervous." "Janine," Lucas confessed as she adjusted his outfit for the presentation. "It's normal to be nervous before an important presentation," Janine replied, with her usual mix of firmness and gentleness. "But remember what we always practice. Take a deep breath, visualize success, and trust in your preparation. What if I can't stand the whole time? Then you sit with dignity and keep singing. The important thing isn't to stand the whole time. It's to do your best and be proud of what you achieve." Ronald, hearing the conversation from the doorway, once again admired Janine's natural wisdom, how she always found the perfect balance between challenging Lucas and respecting his limits. "Everyone ready?" Camilla asked, joining them. "We need to get there early to secure good seats." In the school auditorium, the Sterling family occupied the first row, with Janine sitting discreetly beside them, no longer as an employee, but as an essential part of Lucas's support circle. Her presence generated some curious glances among other families, but no one dared to comment, especially after Ronald had made a point of formally introducing her as our specialized therapist and family friend to some influential acquaintances. When the choir entered the stage, Ronald felt his heart race as he watched Lucas walk slowly, on his own, positioning himself among his classmates. The boy held a small, colorful cane, but used it more as psychological than physical support. His eyes scanned the audience until they found his family, and a radiant smile lit up his face when he saw everyone there, including Janine. The presentation went smoothly, with Lucas remaining standing throughout the first song. In the second, longer one, he discreetly leaned on a strategically placed stool. At the end, when the choir was applauded, Lucas stood up again and, to everyone's surprise, took a few steps forward for a special thank you. "Before we finish," the music teacher said into the microphone, "Lucas Sterling would like to say a few words." A respectful silence fell over the auditorium. Lucas, with a confidence that impressed even his parents, spoke clearly into the microphone. "I wanted to dedicate this presentation to my mom, who always believed in me, to my dad, who has become my best friend in recent months, and especially to Janine, who taught me that my legs may be weak but my will must be strong." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Camilla cried openly. Ronald disguised his tears with a constant cough, and Janine, always discreet, silently wiped her face. At the end of the presentation, as families gathered in the courtyard for a cocktail, something unexpected happened. A small group of parents approached Ronald and Janine. "Mr. Sterling," began a woman who introduced herself as the mother of one of Lucas's classmates, "excuse the intrusion, but we can't help but notice your son's impressive progress. My daughter Beatrice has mild cerebral palsy, and we've been struggling for years to find a treatment that truly works." Other parents joined the conversation, each sharing similar stories: children with different mobility challenges, families seeking alternatives to conventional treatments which, although technically correct, often fail to consider the emotional and motivational aspects of rehabilitation. "Would it be possible," the woman hesitated, "to talk about the techniques you use with Lucas? Perhaps Ms. Janine could share some guidance." Janine looked at Ronald, uncertain how to proceed. He nodded, encouraging her to respond. "I'm not graduated yet," she explained humbly. "I'm only in my first semester of physical therapy. What I do with Lucas is a combination of adapted conventional techniques with approaches I learned caring for my brother." "But it clearly works," another father insisted. "We saw your son walking alone, something we were told would take years to happen if it happened at all." Ronald observed the interaction with growing interest. An idea began to form in his mind, something he had been considering for weeks, but which now seemed to crystallize as a concrete possibility. That night, after Lucas fell asleep exhausted but radiant with his success, Ronald gathered Camilla and Janine in the living room. "I have a proposal to make," he announced, serving tea to the two women. "After what we witnessed today, it's clear there's an unmet demand. Many families face similar challenges to ours, but don't have access to approaches that truly work." Camilla and Janine watched him with curiosity. "I'm thinking of creating a therapeutic center," he continued. "A place where the techniques Janine developed with Lucas can be applied to other children. A space that combines the technical excellence of the best professionals with the humanized approach that made such a difference for our son." Janine's eyes widened. "Mr. Sterling, that would be incredible, but I don't have the qualifications to lead something like that." "Not yet," he agreed. "But in a few years when you graduate, you will. In the meantime, we can assemble a team of specialists who will work with you, developing and systematizing your techniques. You would be the therapeutic coordinator, bringing your experience and vision while completing your education." Camilla, who had been silent, spoke with enthusiasm. "That's a wonderful idea, Ronald. We could start small, perhaps with a few families from Lucas's school, and expand gradually. And we could offer scholarships for families who can't afford to pay," Janine added, already engaged with the idea. "Many children in the public health system wait months for a few physical therapy sessions that could make all the difference if they were regular." Ronald smiled, seeing the enthusiasm of the two. It was exactly what he envisioned, a project that united Janine's knowledge, Camilla's sensitivity, and his own business acumen. "We'll need an adequate space, top-of-the-line equipment, a multidisciplinary team," he began to list. "And a name," Camilla completed. "Something that captures the essence of what we want to build." Janine, usually so practical, allowed herself a moment of dreaming. "New Steps Rehabilitation Center," she suggested. "Because that's what we offer, the chance to take new steps, whether physically or in life." Ronald and Camilla exchanged glances. It was perfect. In the months that followed, the project took shape with surprising speed. Ronald applied to the initiative the same energy and strategic vision he had dedicated to building his business empire. Camilla mobilized her network of social contacts to create an advisory board composed of renowned doctors, therapists, and educators. And Janine, as she progressed in her studies, methodically documented every technique, every adaptation, every insight she had developed in her work with Lucas. One particularly significant afternoon, Ronald arrived home with important news. "I found the perfect location for the center," he announced during dinner. "An old mansion in Brooklyn Heights with a large garden. It will need renovation, but it has the potential to be exactly what we envisioned. And I secured the support of Dr. Helen Bright, that neuropediatrician from Mount Sinai," Camilla added. She was fascinated by Janine's approach and offered to supervise the development of the therapeutic program. Lucas, who followed everything with growing interest, made his own contribution to the project, I can be the center's ambassador. I can show other kids that it's possible to get better, that they don't have to be afraid of the exercises. The boy's idea was met with enthusiasm. Who better to inspire other children than someone who had experienced the same challenges and triumphs? One night, when everyone had retired, Ronald found Janine in the improvised study room where she often stayed late, immersed in anatomy and physical therapy books. "Still awake?" he asked gently. She smiled, rubbing her tired eyes. "I have a kinesiology exam tomorrow. It's fascinating how the human body works. All the details I never noticed, even having worked so many years with my brother." Ronald nodded, sitting in a nearby chair. "Janine, I want to thank you." She seemed surprised. "For what, Mr. Sterling?" "For everything," he replied simply. "For helping my son, for showing me what I was missing, for teaching me that some of the greatest lessons come from the most unexpected sources." Janine lowered her gaze, visibly emotional. "You changed my life too. I never imagined I could study, have my family close, do work that truly matters. We are all transformed when we make space for the unexpected," Ronald philosophized, "when we let go of our prejudices and truly see others." At that moment, sharing the comfortable silence that only arises between people who deeply respect each other, both knew they were at the beginning of something extraordinary. Not just the creation of a therapeutic center, but the construction of a legacy based on values that transcended the social and economic barriers that once separated them. 2 years passed in a breath. The old mansion in Brooklyn Heights, once abandoned and deteriorated, now shone with vibrant colors and a welcoming design. The New Steps Rehabilitation Center would officially open its doors that Saturday morning, after months of meticulous planning, structural renovations, and the installation of state-of-the-art equipment. Ronald walked down the main corridor, checking every detail before the inauguration ceremony. The walls, painted in soft tones, displayed artworks created by children with different motor challenges. Each therapy room had been designed to be both functional and inviting, far from the clinical coldness of traditional hospital environments. "What do you think?" he asked Lucas, who accompanied him, walking steadily by his side. The boy, now 11, had progressed incredibly. He still occasionally used a light cane for longer distances, but within familiar environments, he moved with impressive ease. "It's perfect, Dad," Lucas replied, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I can't wait to show it to the other kids, especially the therapeutic game room." The room in question was the pride of the project, a space where every play, every game, every recreational activity had been carefully designed to work different motor aspects, always disguised as fun. "It was Janine's idea, wasn't it?" Lucas asked, referring to the room's concept. "Yes, she always insisted that recovery needs joy to be effective." Speaking of her, Janine appeared at the end of the corridor, carrying a pile of colorful folders, the personalized records for each child, who would begin treatment the following week. Dressed in a white lab coat over casual clothes, her badge identifying her as therapeutic coordinator, she seemed both professional and approachable. "Are you approving the final inspection?" she joked, approaching the two. "All in order, coordinator," Ronald replied with a smile. Lucas was admiring the therapeutic game room. "Glad you liked it. It was inspired by what we used to do in the game room at home, remember? Only now we have professional equipment and adequate space." Lucas nodded, nostalgic. "I miss those days sometimes." "It was fun to improvise. And we still improvise when necessary," Janine assured him. "Creativity remains our best tool." The three continued their walk through the facility, occasionally stopping to admire some special detail. The sensory garden, designed to stimulate different senses while working on balance. The heated therapeutic pool. The music room, where adapted instruments would allow children with motor limitations to experience the joy of creating sounds. "Janine!" Camilla's voice echoed down the corridor. "The journalists have started to arrive, and the VIP guests too. We need to organize for the ceremony." The New Steps Rehabilitation Center had attracted significant attention from the media and the medical community. Part of this was undoubtedly due to Ronald Sterling's name as the founder and primary financier. But the genuine interest came from the innovative approach proposed for treatment, the combination of scientifically proven techniques with methods adapted from folk wisdom and practical experience. When Ronald, Camilla, Janine and Lucas arrived at the reception area, already filled with guests, the buzz of animated conversations filled the air. Politicians, renowned doctors, celebrities involved in social causes, everyone wanted to associate themselves with the pioneering project. But the most important group, in Ronald's opinion, were the families, fathers, mothers and children with different motor challenges, some already enrolled to begin treatment, others just curious about the possibilities. A team of carefully selected professionals completed the picture. Physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech therapists, psychologists, all chosen not only for their academic credentials, but primarily for their ability to genuinely connect with the children and their families. When Ronald stepped onto the small improvised stage to begin the ceremony, he felt an emotion different from anything he had ever experienced in his professional life. It wasn't the satisfaction of closing a big deal or the adrenaline of a successful negotiation. It was something deeper, more significant. "Good morning, everyone," he began, adjusting the microphone. "Today is not just the inauguration of a therapeutic center. It is the celebration of a journey that began unexpectedly a little over 2 years ago, when He paused, searching for the right words, "when I finally opened my eyes to what truly matters." From the audience, Camilla watched him with evident pride. Beside her, Lucas smiled, holding Janine's hand, who had become much more than an employee. She was an integral part of the family. The New Steps Rehabilitation Center is born from a personal story, but I hope it writes hundreds of other stories. Stories of overcoming, of discoveries, of realized potentials. Stories of children who, like my son Lucas, can go beyond what diagnoses predicted when they receive adequate support. Ronald invited Janine to join him on stage. She ascended, visibly emotional, receiving warm applause, especially from the families present. "This extraordinary woman," Ronald continued, "entered my home as a domestic employee and ended up revolutionizing our family life. Her experience with her brother, her dedication to my son, and her practical knowledge form the backbone of this center's philosophy. Now graduated in physical therapy with honors and pursuing a specialization in neuropediatrics, she leads our team with the same blend of science and humanity that made such a difference for Lucas." Janine, always reserved when it came to public recognition, gave a brief thank you and introduced the team of professionals who made up the center. Then, to everyone's surprise, she invited Lucas to the stage. "Our true inspiration and first successful patient," she announced with evident pride. Lucas, with the confidence he had developed in recent years, walked to the microphone without hesitation. His posture still showed some of the characteristics of his condition, but what stood out most was his determined and joyful expression. "When I was little," he began in a clear voice, "I thought I would never be able to play soccer or run or simply walk without help. The doctors told my parents that I should accept my limitations. But Janine taught me that limitations are just challenges we haven't learned to overcome yet." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Lucas continued, "Today I play soccer with my friends. I'm not the best player, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is to participate, to feel the joy of doing something that seemed impossible. And that's what we want to offer here, the chance for every child to discover that many impossibles are just not yet tried hard enough." When the formal ceremony ended, guests were invited to tour the facilities in small guided groups. Ronald stepped away from the crowd for a moment, needing time to absorb the magnitude of what they had achieved. Ronald Sterling. The familiar voice made him turn. It was Mark Vance, his old business rival, the man who had tried to hire Janine 2 years earlier. "Vance," he replied cautiously, "I didn't expect to see you here." The older man seemed uncomfortable, something rare for someone known for his arrogance in business circles. "I came to apologize," he finally said, surprising Ronald, "for that inappropriate approach I made to your employee." "Former employee," Ronald corrected. "Janine is now the center's coordinator and a partner in the project." Vance nodded, seeming genuinely impressed. "Precisely. At the time, I only saw a domestic employee who could be useful. I didn't understand the human value she represented. He paused, looking around. Now I understand. My grandson Michael is enrolled to start treatment here next week. The revelation surprised Ronald. Your grandson? Yes. He has mild cerebral palsy. We took him to all the specialists, from the United States to Europe. No one achieved the results you obtained with your son. When I learned about this project... Vance hesitated, visibly emotional. I put my pride aside. My grandson's well-being is more important than any business rivalry. Ronald offered his hand to Vance, who accepted it firmly. Your grandson will be very welcome here, Vance. This space knows no rivalries, only possibilities. After the guests departed, only the Sterling family and Janine remained at the center. Sitting in the sensory garden, they watched the sun set through the specially selected foliage designed to create plays of light and shadow. We did it, Camilla said, holding her husband's hand. We did it, Ronald agreed, affectionately squeezing her hand. Lucas, lying on the specialized synthetic grass that covered part of the garden, watched the sky begin to reveal its first stars. Janine, he called. Remember when you told me I would walk alone one day? Back then I didn't really believe it. Janine smiled, lying beside him to contemplate the same sky. And now? Now I know you were right. And that walking was just the beginning. Ronald watched the scene, his heart overflowing. He had built skyscrapers, developed entire condominiums, transformed the urban landscape of New York City. But nothing compared to the transformation he had witnessed and experienced in recent years. His family, once fragmented by his emotional absence, now pulsed with life and genuine connection. His son, once limited not only physically but also by a lack of confidence, now overflowed with potential and determination. And he himself, once hardened by an obsession with material success, now understood the true definition of wealth. What are you thinking about? Camilla asked, noticing his distant gaze. How life comes full circle, he replied. How sometimes we need to get lost to find the right path. Janine, who overheard them, added her own reflection. Back in Savannah, my mother always used to say, God writes straight with crooked lines. She wasn't educated, but she had wisdom. Wisdom you inherited, Camilla observed, and which will now be multiplied through this center. Lucas jumped up with the characteristic energy of pre-adolescence. Can we have dinner to celebrate? I'm starving. Everyone laughed, the magic of the moment giving way to everyday practicality. As they prepared to leave the center, Ronald paused one last time in the main lobby, observing the large panel displaying the New Steps mission. We believe every child deserves the chance to discover their unique potential. Here we measure success not just in steps taken, but in smiles earned, in independence achieved, in possibilities opened. Because every great advance begins with a small step, taken with courage and hope. The words written by Janine and refined by Camilla perfectly captured the essence of what they had built together. A space that transcended the traditional concept of rehabilitation to embrace a more holistic vision of human development. Ronald turned off the lobby lights, closing the door with the certainty that, the next morning, that space would be filled with children's voices, with challenges and triumphs, with small and great victories. The New Steps Rehabilitation Center was just beginning its journey, just as he himself had begun a new phase of his life a few years earlier. As he walked towards the car, where his family awaited him, Ronald reflected on the extraordinary sequence of events that had brought them there. It had all started with a seemingly insignificant change in his routine, arriving home earlier on a random Wednesday. That small deviation from his usual path had revealed truths that had been hidden right before his eyes. "Dad, let's go," Lucas called, impatient. Ronald smiled, quickening his pace. The future awaited, full of possibilities, for his son, for the children who would be treated at the center, and for himself, eternally transformed by an employee who had entered his home to clean the floor, but ended up cleaning his heart of the layers of indifference and prejudice that had hardened it. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Ronald, Lucas, and Janine has touched your hearts as much as it touched ours. To continue this journey of emotions and reflections, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about personal transformations and triumphs. Find it here by clicking on the left. If you enjoyed this narrative, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of American and universal life. What touched you most in this story? Ronald's transformation? Janine's dedication? Lucas's determination? Share with us in the comments. Your participation is essential for us to continue creating content that moves and inspires.